welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. We thank you very much for joining us today. As you know, we've talked about the fact that these podcasts hope to explore issues related to the revolution in longevity and how it is impacting our families as well as our community. Please check out our website, jewishsacredaging.com. The Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. We appreciate and welcome your feedback and suggestions. Just drop me an email at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. It is, as many of you know, the beginning of a brand new year, brand new Torah reading cycle, and it was a perfect time to share her wisdom and her work in a very, very exciting new project. Rabbi Susan Elkodsi from the Malvern Jewish Center, the rabbi there up in beautiful Long Island. And Susan, welcome. We want to talk about this brand new book that you've really poured your heart and soul in for those last couple of years, Midrash Hazak. First of all, what is it? What motivated you to do it?
So Midrash Hazak is a crowdsourced, I guess that's the popular word, weekly Torah commentary. The subtitle is Torah Wisdom by 70 over 70, but who's counting? Contributors at the time that they contributed were at least 65 years old. They're still at least 65. And the idea was to look at a weekly Torah reading and write a Devar Torah from the perspective of somebody 65 and older, speaking to that same peer group. So that's what I set out to do, to find these people and ask them to share their wisdom. And I noticed that nobody had done this. And I'm still amazed that nobody has gotten to this before me. You've been publishing, since I've known you, your Divrei Torah every week. That's your voice, which is fantastic and a lot of wonderful things to think about.
Thank you.
It's an opportunity for Jewish educators, lay people, rabbis, and cantors to think about the Parsha, the Torah reading, in a way that they may not have thought about before, and to answer the question, how can I live until I die, and how can Torah help me do that?
On Parasha Breshit, which is this week, Rabbi Allen, Katie Allen, that she begins her discourse asking that question, and I think she wrote it when she turned 70, asking that very, very question. The mnemonic for Chazak is also fascinating because it kind of like sets a tone. So walk me through that so people understand. First of all, there may be one or two people who don't know the Hebrew. So Chazak is what? And what's the mnemonic for the three letters?
Okay, so Chazak means strength. When we finish a book of Torah, we say Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong or strengthen, and may we be strengthened. We want to be able to go on to the next book, and we return again to every year. We return to this, and every year we see something different in the Torah reading. Chazak is also the name that was given to these particular Shabbats by United Synagogue back in, and I haven't been affiliated with them in a long time, but they used to have a Shabbat Chazak, which was an opportunity for congregations to honor the elders in their community. And I happened to be having coffee several years ago with Rabbi Moshe Edelstein, and we were talking about this project. And he said that Rabbi Morton K. Siegel of blessed memory, who was the director of education for United Synagogue, saw the word Chazak, Chet Zayin Kuf, as an acronym. The Chet is for Chochmah, which is wisdom. The Zayin is for Zikna, which is aging, and the Kuf is Kadima, which is going forward. And I was given permission to use that because I looked at this from the point of view of a midrash exploring from a position of strength. Originally, I wanted to call it Midrash Zikanim or something like that, an elder's Midrash or elder Torah. And one person I mentioned it to said, I don't really want to be thought as old. So I said, all right, we need to find something else. And the word Hazak came to me. And we have a lot of strength, like Psalm 92 says, the Psalm for Shabbat, right? That we will grow strong like a cedar in Lebanon in our old age, and we'll still produce fruit. And that's the fruit of all of these individuals from a diverse range of Jewish practices and Jewish engagement.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know this, that it is a very, very diverse range, dozens of different contributors from all different parts of the Jewish community and different parts of Jewish theological perspectives as well. Also, it doesn't stop with just the weekly Torah portions. There's, I guess you would call it an appendix or whatever, but there's the high holidays, the Regalim, Sukkot, the Pesach, Shavuot, commentaries on it. So it really is a full service compendium for the entire Jewish life cycle year or Torah reading year. So you had to walk through all these things, which is a chore in itself, and kol hakavod. What are the themes? What did you emerge with any themes?
That people have a lot of wisdom to offer, that people thought deeply about these questions, that people have so much experience that they bring to the table throughout their lives. I never really thought about looking at it with a theme other than being older and knowing that baby boomers and older Jewish adults tend to be underserved in mainstream congregations because they're all about, we need young families, the children are our future. And we know that empty nesters don't necessarily leave a synagogue because their kids are no longer involved. They leave because they don't find meaning. And this is an opportunity for peers to help bring meaning to others and to perhaps give people an opportunity to say, all right, let's read this Parsha, this Devar Torah together and think about, does this apply to my life? Does this one totally not apply? And come up with their own understandings of the role that Torah plays. I've often said that we are a generation that in many respects grew up in a Jewish community that was very Protestant. The rabbi and cantor were up in front. I remember my rabbi wearing a robe on Shabbat. There was the responsive reading, and it felt very authoritarian, very frontal. And I made the mistake once of saying that I liked Hebrew school. And I got teased for it, and I didn't need to give people a reason, so I dropped it. But we grew up at a time when there wasn't a lot of joy in Judaism and not a lot of spirituality. And it was just something that you did. And now we can look back on having lived, God willing, full lives and say, what do I need moving forward from my tradition?
So that opens the door to the question of, this is a very, very difficult, transitional, in many ways perilous, challenging times, fill in the whatever adjective you want, that we're living in. How has this experience affected you? You've read all these, you've edited all these dozens and dozens of essays. You just said that the environment you grew up in, which shared probably by many people, was more sterile than it is now in the Jewish world. But yet we're faced with overwhelming challenges. What did you take out of your readings of these essays? What have you learned has changed you in any way?
Good question. Resilience.
What do you mean?
Resilience in a lot of these Divrei Torah. There's a lot of reflection. There is, for lack of a better word, advice for moving forward. and also an understanding that we have not made it this far without our share of tragedies and disappointments. And I think if I were to put out a call for submissions today, it would be a very different book than the one that's coming out in print, because the world is very different than it was when I started working on this more than 5 years ago.
So what would be the difference? What would be the difference?
We would have new people who have turned 65 who would be eligible to contribute, including myself. When I started this, I was not yet 65. The world has changed significantly, and we are responding to it differently. Those of us who have turned 65 in the last few years, I think in many respects are kind of living in a different world, and a lot more is being talked about with respect to aging and gerontology and how technology can be a part of living positive lives as we get older and part of caregiving. You know, the world keeps going round and round, and we're living in a time of unprecedented anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment that we need to respond to. And what do we see in the Torah at our ages? Those of us who did not live through World War II and perhaps did not grow up at a time when, if you had a Jewish name, you weren't even considered for a job.
So your congregation in Malvern, there's a significant number of older adults in the congregation. And you've just walked through the holidays, and you're talking about all this. You just edited the book. What are the people in your congregation of this cohort, of our cohort, which is now a multi-generational cohort? I mean, the 65-year-old and the 95-year-old, both are, quote, older adults, two very, very different growing up experiences. What are they asking you for? What are you sensing that they need or want from their Judaism?
They want a sense of connection. I don't get a lot of feedback. I mean, my oldest, God bless her, is 99 right now, and she is terrific. She still goes to physiotherapy twice a week and gets some exercise in and goes for walks. My youngest is early 60s. We do have an associate member who's in his 50s. But for the most part, it seems that they want connection. They want some understanding. They are also, if they're capable, out in the world doing things, and they come from a time when Jewish observance was not necessarily as important as it might be to other people. So they do want to know what our tradition says about aging. They do want to know what it says about ageism. And they want to be together and learn. Learning seems to be important. When we do Shabbat morning, we have about 45 minutes of Shachrit. And then I have 3 or 4 people who sign on at 10:15, which is the time that the email says Torah study starts.
The learning issue, we're picking up all over the country. There's a huge surge or desire to find out what, in an adult sense, what the tradition says. This is covered in the book in a variety of the different essays. So, for example, one of the themes that I picked up from one of the essays is really a growing acceptance of aging, which is sort of like counterintuitive to the American youth culture. Betsy Stone writes an interesting quote: "Does the wisdom of age balance the inevitable loss of beauty?" Which is an interesting question. It's sort of like the go gray movement. This is who I am, deal with it. I'm not worrying about spending thousands and thousands of dollars to try to look like I'm on a magazine cover, so who cares? This is who I am. Deal with it. What's your reaction to this? Are you seeing in your experience, because certainly in many of the classes that we're teaching, and there is this greater acceptance on more and more people. Hey, this is who I am. I'm going to go, this is who it is. Deal with it.
Rabbi Jill Hackle writes in her Devar Torah about Kedoshim, Mipnei Zikena Ta'amot, I forget the exact quote, but what's printed on buses in Israel, right? You stand before the aged person, you give that person your seat. She talked about how during the pandemic, when people, especially women, could not get to their hairdressers for their monthly cut and color, that many people decided to just allow themselves to go gray, and that it was beautiful. And there is a tension, I think, between wanting to look younger because, let's face it, we're in an ageist society and looks matter, and wanting to say, take me as I am. I don't know how many people of any age really have the confidence to say, this is who I am, deal with it, because it's just not the way we're raised. Maybe the kids who are kind of millennials might feel that way, but deep down, I really wonder if they're not facing similar insecurities to what all of us have. And maybe as we get older, we face fewer insecurities in ourselves because we've got a lot of battle scars and they're not all on the outside.
So speaking of the battle scars, and there are some of the essays that deal with the idea of life experience and the great teachers, and that life experience is really one of the great teachers. But you allude to this concept of forgiveness, and talk to me about this in the reading through the essays. What's the role of forgiveness as we get older?
I think it's an understanding that it's trying to let go of some of the past hurts. I think there's an understanding that whatever may have happened is not going to change and may not be resolved in kind of a, I don't know if it's Buddhist, meditative sense, the idea that we allow things to take up space in our brains that don't serve us, and holding on to past hurts and refusing to forgive, and especially having just come off of Yom Kippur. When we refuse to forgive someone, we're only hurting ourselves. And I think that's something that a lot of the contributors have learned over time, and also forgiving themselves. It's very easy to have a 75, 80-year-old person say to a 30-year-old person, make sure that you don't define yourself by your work and find work that you love. And it's well and good to say that in retrospect, but when this 30-year-old is struggling to support themselves, and certainly out here on Long Island, there's been a lot of discussion about the housing crisis and the lack of affordability. And we make decisions and choices in our younger years, and that younger year could be 2 years ago. But letting go of negative things, if another person's not going to apologize, can we forgive them even though we may not condone what they did? And it may still hurt. But forgiveness allows us to free up some of that emotional energy for more positive things.
There's some very interesting images in the book that I wanted to ask you to just, extrapolate on. I think one of them is Rabbi Caro Schwartz writes about this image of the fabric of life, and that through our life experience, we weave together various experiences, different textures. Dale Friedman also writes about this same thing, that each of us weaves, in essence, our own quilt which is a very, very image. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
As a weaver, I totally get that. And idea, it's very tactile. And our experiences, positive, negative, and neutral, make us who we are. And if we're lucky enough to get to older age or whatever, I think Erickson updated, it's not 65 to 95, you get this kind of older old age, that we're the sum of all of our parts and experiences. And how do we take all of that to live our best lives? And as you've always said in classes and in speaking, what are we going to do with the time that we have, knowing we don't know how much time we have?
That's the Jewish sacred aging, the spiritual question.
Exactly. And I wanted, in the book, I wanted to ask that question without actually asking that way. So each of us weaves together our experiences, and then we might look and say, you know what? I don't like the way this color is interacting with another one. And maybe I need to think about what I need to let go. It's not just downsizing our homes. It's downsizing, maybe, doing a tashlich of the things that are residing in our brains and our bodies that we can cast away and free ourselves up for new experiences, or just perhaps more space to be.
So we're speaking with Rabbi Susan Elkodsi, Rabbi of Malvern Jewish Center, on her new book, Midrash Hazak. The practical aspect of this, somebody wants to get a hold of, how do I get this book?
Well, you can go to benyehudapress.com, and that is B as in boy, ENYEHUDAH, press.com. You can order it there. It will also be available on Amazon. You can contact me through my website, babyboomerrabbi.com.
One of the questions I wrote down from as I got done reading the book, and it is a very useful tool for colleagues, educators, and you're doing your Devar Torah, doing your weekly Torah study. It's another very, very valuable resource to add to all the other resources that we have, and it's very contemporary because it's very personal. The essays are, in many ways, very, very personal, which led me to write down the question of, can we rewrite our life story as we age? Or, as you said, are we just totally the sum of our parts? And as we get older, those parts all flow together in that fabric. Or can we rewrite our own journey? Because the journey image also, very classic Jewish image, the journey image also is very, very powerful throughout the book. A lot of the colleagues writing about the concept of the journey, literally, metaphorically. Do you believe that people of our age can rewrite their own story?
Perhaps some people can. I'm thinking about the image of a photo album or a scrapbook and my husband just had this conversation with a friend who's divorced and wants to know if there's a way to find all the photos on his phone with his ex-wife to erase her from those pictures and keep the others. You can't change the past, but you can change how you interact with it. So you can't just say, you know what, I'm going to wipe out my 20s because those weren't great years. I think more importantly, we have to acknowledge the positives and negatives, the good decisions we made, the not so good decisions we made. And part of this perhaps goes along with writing a spiritual legacy or an ethical will, some of which perhaps we want to share with future generations, and maybe some of it is just for ourselves. I'm not a journaler, but I do often recommend it to people who are struggling with something. I can't change what happened, but I can change how I react to it. How do I rewrite? I don't know. Maybe it's more that I edit what I want to remember. And I think we do that anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, Midrash Hazak, Rabbi Elkodsi, thank you very much. This is, you really did a great job putting this whole thing together. I know you've been working on this for several years, ups and downs, pandemic, no pandemic, this, that, and the other thing. But the result is very gratifying. And the breadth of experience of the various colleagues from which I commend you on. I think it really gives a very, very interesting insight. And the addition of the Regalim and Yontif Torah portions also is very, very, very valuable. So I wish you much success and joy with this and continue with your good work. To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to support our work, please feel free to go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com. There's a conveniently located donate button. Just click it, follow the prompts. We really do appreciate it. For those of you who would like to sponsor one or two or more of these podcasts, just email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubecken Media in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a shout out to our producer, Steve Lubecken. Until we see each other again, thank you for joining us. We do appreciate your time and your interest. I look forward to seeing you again. And until we meet again, please take care of yourself, stay healthy, and most of all, especially in this world, be kind to one another. Shalom, Todah.